search engines are still pointing to us as an authority on investing in finance education. So in the last few years, that has meant expanding into other channels. We have a podcast now. We have newsletters that we write every day, finding different vehicles to directly reach our audience besides search.
I'm sure, I mean, even from our perspective from BBC in terms of how the evolution, because we went very digital quite early, and now you're just seeing how you're keeping up as you're trying to make sure search engine optimization, all the new formats that come out, how do you make your content to stay top of mind in this digital landfill, you know, because there's so many Me Too's. So how do you keep staying, because Investopedia just rolls off your tongue, you just think, there's no other Investopedia, but keeping that top of mind, how have you guys done that?
Sure. So that's paying attention to traffic and paying attention to what is actually trending, but also looking within our pieces of content and seeing what content is related to the other pieces. That's redoing the taxonomy of the website. So if you've come in, like a lot of I was looking at the traffic from Africa, what people look up. A lot of people are looking up, how does blockchain work? A lot of people are looking up how to trade foreign exchange. We see what they're looking for and then what their journey is through our site. So we've rearranged our content areas and the taxonomy of the site. So if you come into an article like that, you're going to find the other steps in that journey to really learn it on those pages, and then being able to use that. And then we also use search tools like obviously Google Analytics, but SEMrush and others, and our own organic tools to see where the gaps are, because we have 35,000 pieces of content. We haven't covered everything. So in Africa, for example, we say, what are people looking for in the last 2 months and what might they be looking for 2 months from now? And we start to fill those gaps with new content and then invest a lot of money and time in updating it so that when you're Googling, how does blockchain work in Africa, the Investopedia article on that is coming up.
Makes perfect sense. So I'm going to bring Neil on to call. And Neil, I'm just touching base. Just give us a bit of a.
Lost you.
I may have to come back in as moderator. We lost you a little bit, Yewande, on the audio connection. A little bit of a freeze there.
Been as an older, long-standing organization.
Sorry, Yewande, I missed you because you froze on the screen. Sorry.
Oh, apologies. Sorry, the network. So I was just saying, you've served as senior positions and with older organizations and now partnering with the young startups and whatnot. So in terms of when you're with an older organization, being a chief digital officer of Rolls-Royce, how did you make that transition and get Rolls-Royce digital? Let me just use that term.
I mean, Rolls-Royce had been using digital techniques for a long time, but in a more traditional way. My whole mission was to try and accelerate the pulse, which they were thinking about new things. And I always call it the paradox mindset. I think when and by the way, it doesn't matter whether you're working with a traditional industrial company or whether you're working with a country or you're working with a more advanced company. The truth is that you've got to try and break this paradox mindset. You've got to somehow make the people, the status quo, people who are currently in charge, feel that what's happening they own and that they have some top-down control on. But at the same time, you've got to unleash this bottom-up enthusiasm to do new things in new ways. So, that's really quite a difficult game to play. And so that was what I was trying to bridge. So, I made it very, very certain that at any point in time, the business units felt that they were setting the challenges that we were trying to aim the digital gun at. I made it very clear that our team would always break even within a year in terms of return on investment. And I also made sure that any value that we created, we didn't embed ourselves. We had signed off by the CFO of the business. So really made them feel that they were part of setting this. But 90% of this is the other bit. 90% of it is, and by the way, you can't just drop one of those two. You can't say, I'm going to set up my own digital team and get on with it and bring back the answer, because you just ignore the first bit. And you can't just do it top down. The CEO says we're digital and it happens, So you've got to do both. And it's really a paradoxical cognitive set of skills. So and it's 90% sociology. So we spent a lot of time, spent on trying to create enthusiasm, whether that was trying to make a governance that was more supportive, whether it was trying to not set a master plan, but let people find their own problems under an aligned autonomy that we set from the center, whether it was breaking down the digital team and giving it back to the business units so that they were part of the family as opposed to a separate group. Lots of communications, lots of storytelling, lots of methodologies around agile and bringing people into small projects and letting them grow into bigger ones, and very much the Adobe model. We try to bring in that way of working. And then a lot of around universities and academies and trying to get out there and train people on how to think differently and how to maybe have different cultural norms and language. So, I mean, those are all the sort of things we try to do. So, kept the businesses engaged, made them feel that this is actually in their interests, but at the same time created a movement or a sort of an underswell which was going in the right direction, that made people feel willing and able and confident. It is 90% sociology and 10% technology. That's my lesson, whatever digital innovation job I do. So that's how we did it. And we sort of did that in 2 years, and it's carried. I mean, I left, obviously, and we didn't get everything right, but my job was to set off the grenade as opposed to see it right the way through, right?
I think that getting the having worked with a lot of public.
Yewande, I think we're getting half of what you're saying. So I'm going to take it back until we can hear you. And if who's ever reconnecting could mute, that would be fabulous. Yemi, Yewande, do we have you? We have you back, Yewande?
Am I back?
You're back. There you go.
Am I back? Oh, sorry about that. I don't know what's wrong with the network this evening. But yeah, so I was just talking to Yemi real quick in terms of, from your experience working with public sector and especially Nigerian public sector, can you tell all of us how the enablers and the challenges, because I can't imagine trying to do a digital transformation project with a public sector institution.
It's quite an experience. First of all, you definitely have to have the buy-in of the leadership, otherwise it wouldn't work, because they are there to be able to help you enforce whatever processes you're automating. You know, like Neil said, it's 90% sociology. So the technology is there, the technology is working. You have to be able to navigate in terms of the politics, the policies, and be a bit of diplomacy. In the public sector, when they hear technology, it's as if they're coming to take my job. You know, so there's this competition between the job security and embracing of technology. So what you have to do is do a lot of long-term education, because they have institutionalized the ways they have been doing, you know, the work over the years. So maybe about 30, 40 years, the same pattern of doing the work. So it's a paradigm shift, a major one, and you have to do a lot of change management and hand-holding. I'll give you a simple example. You would take computers. You see, the public sector is hierarchical, and when the senior management are not agreeable, the directors and the lower cadres will follow suit. And so if you take your computers to a ministry and say, this is how you use it, this is what you're going to use it for, if the head of that ministry does not say they should use it, the computer is going to be covered, and you will meet it there about a year or two later. And one of the things that we tried to do was, okay, let's not give them desktops. Let's move over to maybe laptops so that it's easy for their mobility, because they complain they have to close at a certain time. And what happened was that they started giving the laptops to the children. So there's a lot of social education, a lot of hand holding that you have to do for a long period of time, while you're sort of doing a bit about the implementation of the technology. So when you get them to the point where they are now seeing you as a friendly face, or and they seemingly want to start using it, then you can then start the education on the technology. So it's sort of like that.
Catch 22. All right, I'm going to go back to Caleb. But what I did take home from there is this Tom and Jerry cat and mouse game between, are you taking my job, or are you improving my efficiency to do my job better and quicker and go, so it's like you said, it's an educational process that people have to factor in to the process of digital transformation and going digital, because a lot of people just, at the beginning, it's, I don't understand, what is this? They want to take my job. So I think that was very clear from what you just said. But back to you, Caleb. I think in a lot of markets, when you're going digital, and what we have now with a lot of policy information that needs, and a lot of policy changes that need to happen, what would you say in your experience are the key, and especially looking at the African environment, when you're going digital as an African organization, what would you say are the key policy considerations to take note of?
Well, for us, we want to make sure we're speaking to them in the language and the context that makes the most sense. So because we are a free service, we are freely available on the internet, we can enter any market that will allow us in, and we're all over the world. But in terms of growing audience and growing traffic, you want to make sure you're talking to the people that you want to be speaking to. So again, that's looking and seeing where those content gaps are, where the searches are, where the most interest is among the biggest concentration of your audience. Now, we're big and we have a lot of content out there and a lot of visitors, but I was looking, in South Africa is our biggest country within Africa in terms of traffic, than Nigeria. Wherever you find more English speakers, you'll find more Investopedia users by population. But the interest from country to country is very different. What people are interested in South Africa is very different from Nigeria. So we have to make sure we're trying to be country specific to the degree that we can. Now, we're not going to create an entire library of content for one country, but we have to make sure we're addressing the issues that investors or people who are just managing their own money are dealing with. So there's everything from, socially responsible investing in Africa to how do I invest in cryptocurrencies in Africa, or how do I buy securities in other markets if I'm living in Africa? Those questions are pouring into our site every single day. So being very specific to those questions is what helps us kind of get through to the audience. And in terms of policy, we have to stay on top of what's happening in terms of policy, both monetary policy, fiscal policy, but also government policy, because it changes the nature of our existing articles. If we have an article on the fastest growing countries within Africa, that can change on a quarterly basis. So we got to make sure we're on top of that as well.
So for you as an information provider, you have to be top of your game and knowing where the policy changes, because you can't advise anyone if you're not sure that they've changed the policy completely in South Africa, or you sort of tweaked it in Nigeria and done something else in Ghana. So staying on top of the policy changes as an information provider, because you're a trusted source of information, is going to be critical. Right. So Neil, back to you. As you're working with a lot of the Queen's Awards for the Industry Innovation Panel, and a lot of other, what do you see is the future? Like, we've gotten to this point, you guys have gone through the journeys of the three of you, but when you think of 2020 and the future of digital transformation, how you make that, I think it needs to be part of your DNA now, constantly being on top of that. And so what would you say would be the future on this digital journey that organizations need to go through?
Well, any transformation is helped by a compelling event. We wouldn't wish this particular compelling event, but it's a compelling event, and it's like moved us right up with warp speed and into new technology thinking. Even in the charity I'm involved in, Bernardo's, it's changed dramatically the way we're doing remote working, remote services, children, etc. In terms of the future, I think I see two things particularly. One is the universality, the self-help, that instead of being in the digital elite, this is becoming much more universal. And it's back to your point about replacing my job or supplementing my ability to be more creative and more useful. I think we're going to see digital come much more into the hands of a bit like when you had your first car back. Well, I did. You guys probably didn't, but back in Callum called me a veteran, so I obviously know that these cars. But you used to have to carry around things to fix your engine, and go to a garage when you want it fixed. But now everyone feels comfortable with driving a car. It's not something that needs advanced skills to worry about if you break down. And I think we're going to see digital the same way. We're going to see people much more comfortable about self-use, and particularly on the data side. I think we're going to see a lot of analytics tools that are going to let people delve into insights in a different way that we can think of now. And then that predictive insights is the other part of it. I think we're going to start seeing as we bring data together from so many different sources. I think that's the big. I mean, I always say that you should be thinking about being data first as opposed to digital first. Maybe that's my background, but data is about insight. It's about predicting problems. It's about getting new ways of solving problems. And I think we're going to see a massive burst on the ability to predict and see and work with change through digital and the data that we're collecting, using, managing, etc. So those are the universality and insight. So the two things I think we're going to see big moves on.
Data-centric, customer-centric, digital-centric, employee-centric.
They're all constants. I mean, they're all constants. They aren't the thing that's always been the case and will be the case. I mean, co-creation with customers comes with predictive insights. I think once you get the ability to get data and you share it and you co-create with your customers or the people who are stakeholders around you, then I think we'll see a lot more collaboration. But that to me is something that you've always tried to extend. It's a given. What we're talking about, the things that are going to be happening in digital that will actually turn it into much more powerful and faster.
Yemi, over to you. We're running out of time, but I'm just going to say, Yemi, another point. The future. You're working with Rising Tide, working on a lot of women's participation in investing. But in terms of this, I still go back to your work with the public sector, which you've done a lot of digital work with. How do you see that journey? Obviously different governments are more advanced in this whole digital journey than others. Some states, i.e. countries, are more advanced in the digital journey than others. But what do you see it as the future for public sector development? Yemi?
The public sector generally across the continent has started embracing technology. They are leveraging on technology to run the governments. More importantly is that for instance in Nigeria, I know the office of the president has said that all ministries, departments, and agencies need to start digitalizing their documents in the various ministries. That is a major circular and policy that has come out, and this is going to pivot the acceptance of the digital economy. The other thing is for us as a government to understand that they're going to leverage on technologies, that they change the name of the Ministry of Information and Communication Technology to the Ministry of Communication and Economic Digital Economy. So those are the government is sending a message to the people and to the public sector that look, hey, we're going digital. This year has pivoted the acceptance of digital in all sectors. And when it comes down to my passion, which is the angel investing sector, you would find that a lot of traditional industries are now their applications are being taken by the fintechs and the agri-techs and the edutechs, and making them more granular, such that, all the startups are now taking a chunk of a piece of whatever industry application, and then they are, sort of trying to specialize in certain ways. So you have companies that are taking the payments of of banks and the loans of banks, and then they're specializing and coming up with an application or a service to provide. So people are now beginning to embrace and innovate, and of course, everything is centered around the customer.
Like I said earlier, customer-centric, data-centric, mobile-centric, digital-centric, employee-centric. I think once you have that combination, I think the change of communicating that through, all the stakeholders will buy into this digital journey and make sure you're providing, from Caleb's perspective, the information you're providing is relevant to your audience. From your perspective, the public sector buy-in and realize it's not an option, right? Going digital is not an option. That's the main thing. And in terms of what Neil said, in terms of the data will inform your next move, right? So you've got to be on top of that. You've got to know what is the data saying and make sure that that really dictates your next move. So I want to thank all of you for joining us this evening. Caleb Silver, Editor-in-Chief of Investopedia, Neil Crockett, board member and former Chief Digital Officer of Rolls-Royce, and Yemi Keri, Chief Executive Officer of Hecabella Limited. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yewande. You did a better job than I could have done on that. So sorry for stepping on you.
No, we enjoyed your bits also. All right.
Thanks so much, Yewande. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Bye. Pleasure.